I've got a question from Raj. Good old Raj. Thank you. You always ask really good questions, Raj. Very simple to the point. What are surprise techniques? Bang. Okay, thank you for that, Raj. What are surprise techniques? Oh, well, first of all, we have to look at the nature of surprise. What is surprise? Where does it happen naturally? When does surprise happen naturally? Okay, when something happens suddenly, you don't expect it. Okay. So if you want to utilize surprise as a trance induction, or to insert suggestions in that moment of surprise, then you can do something which the client doesn't expect. It'd be something like lifting an arm suddenly, or changing the topic of conversation suddenly, or pointing down at the floor and pointing down something else and say, look at that cat. And you haven't got a cat. That's a surprise. Okay, the idea with surprise is that it puts you into an altered state immediately, very quickly, into an altered state. And when you're in that altered state, everything else outside of the periphery disappears. You're just in that state of surprise. So naturally occurring surprise is when something happens you didn't expect. So examples of that would be something like a shock. There was a shock. Any kind of situation where you have shock, you go into an altered state because you don't know how to deal with it. You can't cope with it. It's kind of a combination of confusion as well, with the shock. So shock is a good example of that. Confusion, of course, is a state. You could say, you could create confusion and then do something in that confusion, like lifting the arm or something. So you're combining here surprise, that is something that they didn't expect, with the confused state that induces a trance, with that humor. Okay, think about humor. When somebody sets up a joke and then they give the punchline and there's kind of play on words or something, and suddenly you get it, you get the joke. For that moment you get the joke, you laugh, and that moment is a surprise because you didn't expect it, right? Surprise, you go into a trance. Yes, we actually go into hypnosis when we laugh at a joke because we limit our awareness to just that experience of laughing and getting the joke. Wow, the insight, the surprise of it, and we exclude everything else that's going on outside of that. So humor is another example. And of course, the other thing is we need to utilize it. So the whole idea of surprise is creating one and then utilizing it for something. And in hypnotherapy, as I just said, an example would be for catalepsy. We talked about catalepsy. So you talk about a subject, you get the client talking to you, especially when they get to the point where they're talking to you about something and then they're really focusing on getting their words right. And you just lift their arm up in the air like this, and you carry on talking. And because they are so focused on what they're telling you, they don't have any conscious awareness that you've lifted their arm. And meanwhile, you do that thing where you push them either, and you carry on talking. And then you say, so what's happened to your arm? And you look at their hand and they go, oh, how did that happen? How did that happen? You didn't do that. Another part of you did that. How did that part know how to do that? They might say, well, I seem to remember you touching my arm, but okay. So you were doing, so you're distracting them with something, and then you're doing something which is surprising to get that to happen. Sometimes I've done it with children. What's happened, and talk about the cat on the floor, for example, talking to a child about their problem. And you can say, what do you like animals? Do you like pets? Do you have a pet? Yeah, you can have a pet cat or something. Yeah, what's her name or his name? Whatever the cat's name is. And you can say, yes. Can you hear her purring now? Okay, so you're now going to create a positive hallucination. What does her purring sound like? Yeah. And you remember what it feels like to stroke her? Yeah. Oh, there she is. And you point at the floor. There she is, there on the floor, right there. Look down. Do you want to bend down and stroke her? 9 times out of 10, and 10 with a kid, they'll bend down and stroke this invisible cat because you've already created the experience with asking about how she sounds, etc., what it feels like. And then they see it, they hallucinate the cat. So that's a kind of surprise technique as well. Suddenly you just throw that in when you're talking about something else with the client's problem. Okay, so you distract them to something, and they have a surprise for it, because you have to be confident that they're going to be able to hallucinate. Children can hallucinate much more easily than adults as a part of everyday experience, because they do that all the time. They have invisible friends, etc. So there you go, Raj. That's surprise techniques. And I've used, I think I mentioned a while back about the dentists I was teaching, and I had a kid there who was a thumb sucker, and I used a definite surprise technique on him and his mother. I started to shout at the mother by accusing her, why have you brought this child in? He's 7.5. I won't tell you the whole story. Go back and watch one of the videos. 7.5. Why have you brought him in at 7.5? And that was a surprise for the kid, because he's in front of this whole group of dentists. And it's me blaming his mum for bringing him in as a volunteer client. And the kid's sitting there just, what on earth's going on? That's a surprise technique, of course. Don't recommend it. It worked with me, but maybe I had luck on my side. Okay, quite provocative. Okay.